Welcome to the We Are Film podcast with your hosts, Cameron Gallagher and Zach Bouye.
Welcome, everybody, to
Hola.
the We Are Film podcast.
How's it going?
My name is Cameron Gallagher. As always, who is sitting next to me?
I am very excited.
I am very excited too. We've actually
Also, my name is Zach Bouye.
so we've already had the conversation with the incredible John Adams and Toby Poser from the movie Hellbender, and this is our interview with them. We kind of talk about a lot of really fun stuff, a lot about their filmmaking process, how they work together, just
about the inner dynamics of their family and how like they're able to actually work together and have it be such a cohesive experience where they're able to get a lot done, and also like just how cool they are because
they're just awesome.
They're just a dope couple.
So anyway, let's get into the podcast. So for our listeners out there, we'd love for you guys to just introduce yourselves and just kind of talk about a little bit who you guys are, what you guys do.
Hey, yeah, I'm Toby Poser, and we've got Wonder Wheel Productions and Adams Family Films, and Hellbender's about to drop on February 24th, and we've been doing this since 2010.
And I'm John Adams, and Toby's my lover, and we love making movies together. And we got two kids that help us make our movies, and we're like a team of four. And lately we've been making horror movies because we love the horror community, and we love the artistic freedom that making horror movies gives us.
Yeah, and I was going to ask too, I mean, so we went and obviously saw Hellbender and Anomaly, and we were just blown away. Like you sometimes have going to see a film somewhere, there's always like you either have an expectation, and we had really very little idea other than some of the conversations we'd have with you, and really very little stuff was out there. And
we saw like a couple behind the scenes. It was the tractor that you had lifted up.
Yeah.
And that was
Look at these idiots, they said.
No. And I just remember being blown away when we finished the film. After we talked to you guys and we left, we were like, on the whole ride home, we were discussing the film. We had like a 5-hour drive, and we were just like, we could not stop talking about it. So I want to know, as a whole, and not so much just Hellbender itself, what were some inspirations, for either directors or movies or just tone in general, that inspired the two of you?
My favorite word is tone. So that's so cool. It's so important to us. It's so important to Zelda, who is big on the cinematography part of our team. We are always talking. We watch movies and we talk about tone before we talk about story, before we talk about anything really. So it's a great question. I'll just go right out there and I'll say that The Thing has, for me, the best tone of any movie, because he takes it, he grabs it, and he sticks with it. And I feel it. And I'm always, when the movie's over, I'm freezing cold, and it's just so. I would go with The Thing, not necessarily all of John Carpenter's movies, because he is great at what he does, but The Thing has amazing tone.
Yeah, and also, so we have our band Hellbender, which preceded the movie Hellbender, and the band Hellbender, the E's are sixes, so there are 3, 6, 666. And we had started making some music videos for Hellbender to kind of explore like what the visuals would look like for the music we were making. And that was a kind of a big impetus for making the feature Hellbender, because we were making this video for this song Black Sky, and it was very witchy, and we were in California and we were shooting these gnarled, burnt trees against a burnt hot sky in LA. And we were like, we got to make a movie.
Yeah, let's do this for an hour and a half.
So you could say it's sort of like when how they made Pirates of the Caribbean, the movie, out of the ride.
You guys made that.
Yes, we were very much like them.
I do say though, and one thing what we talked about on the ride was those like your own music, like needle drops in the film, just hit so hard. Like, I love that kind of like punk rockish. I think we're at the festival. You brought up like Black Flag. You said you were arguing for like the Black Flag, and I just love that sort of like real intense sound in the film. And I think it just adds so much, and I think it obviously adds the character too, that it's the two of you, and it's that sort of relationship, but also part of the music as well. And I was going to say on that, obviously I'm really curious, because all of you are working together, what does the sort of writing process look like for Hellbender? You know, how did that sort of move along?
The music or the movie?
The movie.
Got it. Yes. Oh, that's a great question. I think Toby should answer that because she's really our main writer.
Well, I mean, in a sense, we all contribute. We call it slinging spaghetti. So everywhere we go, you know, whether it's eating spaghetti at dinner or just driving in a car, walking the dog, we're always slinging these spaghetti ideas and seeing what'll stick, you know. And then maybe I will write something down. John will write something down and text it to me. And then I'll kind of enjoy formulating a scene out of it. But it's usually only something we very loosely use. We almost always find out. I don't think we've ever worked with a full written screenplay going into a movie. Often we'll start a scene and then we'll realize as we're making it what it's really fucking about.
Yeah, a lot of the time, like things that even we've written down that we think are clever or cool or good dialogue, as soon as we're on set and we're in the trees and in the snow or in the ferns or whatever, when it comes out of our mouth, you're like, oh, you know what? That's not exiting right. That sounds, and then we'll be sitting in the ferns talking about, okay, well, what are we trying to do here? And then we'll start talking to each other and finally the natural dialogue will come out. But the meaning of the scene remains the same.
That's actually pretty in line with what I was going to ask, and because especially with Hellbender, you guys had some delays due to, you know, COVID, and I'm sure it actually kind of was like a blessing and a curse because you were able to kind of extend the process a little bit more and really like think on things. Do you have like a process where you start to edit the film, and then you're able to like take a look at it and then go back and do reshoots, or do you try to like capture as much as possible and then throw it all together in the end?
Excellent question. And we edit as we go, and we try to edit like we basically, obviously we use natural light, so it's very unusual that we ever shoot in the dark. So we shoot right up until the sun sets. We go home, we cook dinner, we throw everything up, and we do a quick edit. Like we quickly, everybody, you know, it only takes an hour to zip through what you've shot, you know, and so you zip through, you find your good stuff, you throw them together very roughly and decide, is this natural? Is this good? Did we get it like both through the lens, but also mostly did we act well? And so, yes, the answer is we edit right as we go, and we always get up the next day and go fix anything that we don't think is genuine.
I love that. It sounds like it's very freeing to be able to not hold something so precious where you're like, okay, this has to be exactly like this or otherwise it's going to fall apart. You know, you're able to watch it grow with it, but then also go back to it and say, okay, this isn't what we wanted, or you know, maybe in that edit you discover something new. And I'm curious, and especially Toby, obviously being the main actress in this, how is it for you that you're acting, but you're also directing? You know, what is that? How is that like directing in essence yourself and Zelda and you know, the whole idea? And then obviously John, you coming in that as well.
That's so cool because I think about that all the time and nobody has ever asked that in all the years we've been making films doing that. So yeah, it can be pretty wild. I think at first it was difficult for me to leave one aside while I did the other. It's gotten a little easier. And in a way, when you're doing so much thinking about the film as a writer and a director, when you're finally stepping into your position as an actor, it helps because you know the story so well, you know. So it's gotten easy. It's got to be a little more seamless for me to go into it. And also it helps when there are two other directors who also know the story really well. So if there's a scene where I really need to focus on my acting, and I come from the acting world, so I really like to focus on my acting. It's nice to know that I trust the other two directors so well. And some days I just don't have to do much directing at all. I just trust them to kind of take the helm.
I could only imagine how fun it must be as like a family to be able to like sit down to your spaghetti dinners and like start like doing like a table read.
It's always a table read, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's always a table read. Like we are always throwing stuff around and ideas, and it's fun because we each take care of our own characters. Like we want to have fun being our character. And we also protect each other's characters too. Like we're making a movie right now. We're making our next one called When the Devil Roams. And it's so fun, like to watch Toby's character blossom, you know, like, and it's so fun to watch Zelda's character blossom. And it's fun to watch my own character blossom. Like it's really a neat experience. And I think we're all getting better at protecting each other's characters and growing them in a really healthy way. Like be like that part of Maggie is so cool. Like, and so then she continues with that part of Maggie, you know? So it's a really neat nonstop experience where, yeah, we'll be sitting at the dinner table and I'll be like, oh, I got a good idea for my character 7. And I'll say it. And someone will give me the, you know, the stink eye and I'll realize, okay, yeah, that was, okay. Forget it. That was dumb. So it's cool.
Absolutely. So one thing, you know, our podcast is for a lot of filmmakers and especially on the lower budget. And one thing that I think we were both blown away by is the visual effects, not just effect wise, but also the visuals in general, like the hanging in the beginning, that sort of stuff.
The key in the hand.
Those things, like,
I don't know if that's too much of a spoiler. But.
I know. Depending on what's in the trailer, we'll have to figure it out. But I think
it's in the trailer.
Okay, good. I do think it is really interesting though that a lot of filmmakers on a lower budget might say we're not gonna do those things because we're almost like too afraid. We don't want to do that. What were some ways that you had these really intense, amazing visuals that you're like, no, we're gonna do this? What was the way you sort of, you know, broke it down and figured out how to do those?
So super great question, because the reason we figured out how to do those is because we don't do them. We have a friend of ours who we met when we started doing The Deeper You Dig. I asked some mutual friends, does anybody know anybody who is fun to hang out with and who does special effects? And we got a name of this guy, Trey Lindsay, and he is like our 5th family member. He's a big boy who loves horror and loves to discuss the mechanics of an effect. And we can say, you know, can you make the earth blow up and Saturn crash into it? And he'll be like, oh yeah, that'd be great. Let me tell you, you know, so he's a yes man also. And he's just a pleasure to work with. And we're getting better and better at working with him and delivering him. I think what we're realizing is the most important thing is his effects are only as good as what we deliver to him, the pieces that he gets to put together. And we're getting better and better at understanding what he needs to build a nice effect. And the more organic the pieces, the better the end product.
Yeah, let me give you an example of Trey. So when we were doing Hellbender, at first we didn't really know what the ending would be. And we were like, we came to him with it and said, hey, so we want the mother and Izzy to be in this cave, and there are gonna be all these bones, and the mother trips on the bones and she like breaks off a bone and like takes some intestines and makes like a needle, you know, sticks the intestines into this bone needle, so it's like a bone and intestine thread, and then she like sews, you know, and he's like, oh great, I can do that. Yeah. And then we're like, oh well, what if she like opens her mouth all the way to her jaw hits the floor, and then someone walks into it and she eats him? And he's like, yeah, I could do that.
So we were like, oh great, we'll film that. And then we started to be like, Trey, are you sure you can do this? And you know,
and then we're like, are we sure we want to do that?
And then and then it was like, this is like, okay, we don't even smoke pot, and I think we were high.
Well, I was gonna say there's a lot of practical effects too that you guys did that were very effective. You know, what was the sort of mindset into creating those things that were just sort of in camera?
I love the under the ground tunnel that kind of leads
yeah.
out. And I think as we were like watching, I think I was like tapping camera and I was just like, I want to know how I did that.
Yeah, it's like, wait, what? Like, how did they do this?
Because it seems like it'd probably be simple, but also very complicated to make sure that like everything kind of like looks good on camera. That's always the hardest part, is like making it look good on camera.
I'm going to tell you real fast because I know John wants to talk, and he's so modest, he probably won't say. John built that thing. He basically built a long box And then he, you know, added foam and everything with twigs and painted it. And he also got the Kubota tractor, and he like dug like these tunnels, or you know, there was also a partial tunnel too from like pipes that were being dug out. And so sometimes I would crawl literally in the cold earth, but in other times I would go through this tunnel that John did, and he would just shoot it in segments through this, you know, maybe 5-foot tunnel.
That is so awesome.
Yeah, because it was just being lit by just a lamp.
Yeah.
That was such an advantage. So you'd think like, oh, it's such a disadvantage. You know, how are we going to light a cave? And it's like, you know, we did a little practice run in a ditch where I got Toby to crawl through a ditch, and I followed her with the Ronin. And I realized, I was like, oh, it's amazing because the light only can light a foot around it. So what I did was I built, like Toby said, I built a square box that was about 8 feet long, and I put round chicken wire in it. And then I sprayed the chicken wire with spray foam.
Yep.
Covered it with twigs, painted it with nice red and maroon and oxblood paint. And it looked awful. It looked so awful. And like, it was so cool when I first got her to crawl through it. And actually I realized I had to I had built a tunnel that I was going to crawl through, and I couldn't crawl through it with the Ronin. So I had to cut all that work that I did in half. So that I could walk above it and film her. And then it was so funny was because you can't, it was cool. You just couldn't tell, you know, it's like, because of that low level of light, it was just such an advantage.
I'll say, I remember thinking while we were watching, I was like, did they like build this giant set? That I'm like, that's crazy. It's so nice to hear that though, because I do think a lot of filmmakers might think, oh, there's no way we could accomplish this scene because, you know, we're not going to be able to get this gigantic set. Where, I mean, you know, you're saying some chicken wire and some foam, and it's so effective. Like, it's incredible.
You did the old the Looney Tunes, just like repeating background behind like the Roadrunner going, essentially.
You are so right. It was like, it really was. It was like we actually had to shoot it a couple times because sometimes they'd be like, oh, this twig, like this formation of foam and twigs is too recognizable. And I'm seeing it over and over. So I need now, and I had cut the box in half. So then I realized, oh, I know what I'll do. She'll now crawl on the top half of the box because no one's seen that part. So It was really funny. It was a great learning experience. And you're right. I think in materials, probably like $60 worth of materials, you know?
Wow.
But it took like about a week of messing around to realize how simple it was.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the funnest things about making movies is sometimes you realize this is so simple because you're only filming this particular area.
Yep.
You know, like I always feel guilty because like right now we're shooting a lot of scenes that take place in a carnival in the 1930s. And I'm like, I feel guilty because I don't have a carnival and cars and people and Ferris wheels. But I'm like, but even if I did, they wouldn't even fit in the frame.
Yep.
So just film the actors doing their thing, and then we'll figure out how to get the tent in the background. And that's going to be for Trey. Trey, can you put a tent in the background? Yeah. Oh yeah, I can put a tent in the back. You know, so that's his job coming up.
Well, we were talking before we started recording, and you were saying about the lighting that we do. And with that same concept of the lantern only has a spill of like 3 feet. So anything beyond that you can't see. Actually, in the short film that we had sent you guys to check out, the locker room scene, the brightness level of the entire locker room was almost as bright as the room that me and Cameron are in now. But the flashlight was just insanely bright. So we just exposed for the flashlight, and everything else just,
and it gave us our fake moonlight.
Darker.
But it was that same learning experience of like, it's only what's in camera, nothing else matters. And if you kind of forget about that, but I think it's inspiring. I mean, we left the film festival so inspired watching the film because we were like, wow, this is amazing. Like, there's so many exciting things.
We had a solid like 15 minutes of like, that was amazing. And then we had a 15 minutes of like, are we doing this right? Should we just go make like the full length?
Oh yeah, okay.
We're the reciprocal.
Yeah.
We're like, those guys know how. We need to learn everything from you.
Exactly. That's exactly the conversation we had. Was I was like, you sent us the Rickety Man, and then you sent us Lucid, and both times I'm like, all right, I feel like a freaking dummy.
No, we got to do the opposite.
How are these guys doing this? How do they get this genuine?
Well, the biggest difference is like you guys are going places right now, and we're still like sitting with like negative budget.
Oh no, we have negative budget.
We're all there.
We're in the same place.
So one thing I'd love to talk about too is, so you talk about your editing process in, you're editing while you're writing, and obviously the whole, one of the most interesting parts too is this is a full family. What is it like working as a family and collaborating as a family and, having everyone involved?
It is just excellent. I mean, we've been doing this together since the girls were 6 and 11.
Wow.
And this will be, I think, our 8th feature. So it's just beautiful. It's the most wonderful thing to kind of create something together. And not only that, but since I don't like to use the word like fail, but because we're growing and learning together, we kind of succeed together and we also don't succeed together. And I love that they get to kind of watch us, that they get to watch their parents on the same level as they are, basically, as we learn this beautiful craft. And also it's really fun to then make something and then go around to the festivals, as you know, is like, it's almost like the cherry on the cake that you just got to make the cake just so you can eat the cherry and get to those festivals. But the experiences you have making it together and then also sharing it, once the film is done, are equally beautiful. And it's just something that we'll get to cherish our whole lives.
Yeah. And another thing for us is both Toby and I have always kind of respected our kids' opinions. Like we've always considered them our friends. Like some people are like, that's bad parenting. It's you're a parent and they're a child. And it's like, no, they're my friend. And that's the way it is. And so that's the way we feel about our kids. And we've always respected their opinion, including when they were 5. And Zelda was like, I want to do this. Or Lulu, at 10 was like, I want to go do this. And it'd be like, okay, you know what? Let's see I would never I don't want to do that, but you do. So we're going to do it. So get the camera, get the mics, and we're going to go climb up on top of this thing and shoot it. And a lot of the time you come home and you'd be like, holy shit, only a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old could figure that out, could do that. And you would learn something. And that's been our process with our kids is they teach us. It's not like we're parents that are teaching our kids. It's like, I think a lot of the time it's our kids teaching us, and it's a really great way to grow and evolve. And that happens not just with the filmmaking, but like musically too.
Yeah.
Like since we're in a band together and both of them are like, Dad, listen to this. Let's write something that sounds like this. And maybe initially I'm like, that doesn't sound like Black Flag, but then I'm like, but you know what? It might be better than Black Flag. Let's try it. Let's try to record this kind of song. And so I think it's just wonderful to work as a family, especially if you just consider everybody an equal.
Yeah. And with Zelda, who is really, Lulu is already out of college and everything. And it's so great. We now have her with us and she's so helpful. Yeah. And she'll get to be acting in the film again too, but she especially helps build the sets and shoot. But Zelda now shares the DP role with John since The Deeper You Dig, and where she was 15 or 16 when she made that film. And so to see her now applying to film schools, and
she's gonna fire us soon.
And doing,
she's in like Vogue, right? Did I see you guys post that too? Was it Vogue?
Vogue, yeah. They just had her to be like their artist of the month for this, TikTok campaign. And so she's made her first of a series of videos. So it's so cool to see now her doing her own thing, having, used our films as sort of a springboard. And it's so much fun.
And cheers to Vogue for having the foresight and the originality to go to an 18-year-old kid and be like, hey, make us 4 short films. Like, I remember when they contacted her about it, I was like, well, way to go, Vogue. Like, that's so cool. Like, right? That's pretty ballsy. I mean, you don't know what you're going to get. And, Zelda worked really hard on it. And I say cheers to Vogue, No,
that's awesome. It's amazing too, because I feel like sometimes, and I mean, we feel it in the horror genre, that sometimes the horror genre gets shunned a little bit in the scheme of like the genre filmmaking or just filmmaking in general. So it's really great to see that there is such this, people are starting to realize and recognize the importance of the creatives in horror, maybe horror doesn't hit what they want it to, but there's so much more behind it sometimes.
Yeah, I think like in a way, it's like you guys know the horror community. Like we met you in the horror community and we had like an hour-long conversation that was wonderful. And so we get in the car and we're like, oh my God, those guys are so cool. And that's the horror community.
Yeah.
Like, and so in a way, there's something really cool about it that you almost don't want the industry in Hollywood to like kind of like
don't catch on.
Yeah.
Right. Don't get done too much, like please.
But it is having like this zeitgeist moment, isn't it? I mean, it's like, big Hollywood heavy hitters are making these horror films. But what always amazes me is that people don't realize how brilliant like the horror community is. I mean, we've met some of the most intelligent people in the horror community, and that, who like teach classes and seminars, and they're so smart. And I just love that people tend to think of, the horror community is just dumb. It's just about,
Slashers,
knives and blood.
yeah.
And it's like, oh, no. You have no idea.
And they're very film informed. And it's not just about horror. Like we're talking to people in the horror community, and they know about a Charlie Chaplin film, and they know about a John Carpenter film, and they know the lighting, and they know. So it's really like we learn all the time. Like the conversation, like just that we had with you before you turned the mic on. Like we're taking notes because we're like, this lighting, and so they're so informed, so knowledgeable.
We were actually just having a conversation with, because we did a Kickstarter for Rickety Man. We were just talking to one of our backers yesterday, and we were saying how, like, in horror, it's like you kind of have this expectation that you're going to be uncomfortable at some point. So it's like you kind of have this opportunity to explore a lot of different, like, topics that you don't get to do in, like, a comedy or, like, an action film or, something else that, like, the broader audience is into. It's like it's usually like a drama or a horror where it's just like, you can talk about the relationship between like
mother-daughter,
and a daughter.
I thought that was it was such an intense film about relationship, and I do think that's horror is sometimes that sort of bus to maybe talk about either tough subjects or kind of awkward subjects too sometimes.
Absolutely. I mean, in Lucid, like when we watch Lucid, I can't wait to see how you explore the psychology of what that guy's going to go through. Like just the hint of that, and then me trying to figure out, well, what is this? What an allegory or a metaphor for? It's really fun. I think that's what's really fun as you get more involved with horror, is you realize that even things that you just thought were a slasher, no, they're not. They're a metaphor for something far deeper. And it makes that movie have multi-layers that are fun to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say as Toby, for, obviously a real mother-daughter relationship, what was that like diving into a fictional one, but then also having the real one? Like, I'd love to, I mean, obviously the two of you played it so incredibly well. And I just think that there's got to be something that you're pulling from both real life, but also then just, having good acting chops, of course.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, no, that's cool that you say that. Often people will say, well, they're a real mother and daughter, and that's all it takes, But, we are incredibly close, but we don't do what the Hellbenders do.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a little awkward if you're thinking, like, I only know this because I'm your mom and you're my daughter. So it's really fun. I think sometimes there is that ambient, energy because we are so easy. We have this ease with each other. But in other times it's weird because we don't fight. We tend not to clash. And in Hellbender, they do clash. So I think there was definitely some acting there. Zelda's just so incredible to work with, whether I'm her mom or some other actor. She just gives you so much with nothing. She's so good at just being so still. She's like a snake. And so it's a pleasure for me. Sometimes I forget I'm her mom, and I'm just in that moment as an actor with her for sure.
Yeah, it's fun to watch the two of them act together because they just react to each other. It's neat, and it's you guys are great.
That's pretty inspiring. I have a 10-month-old daughter, and just like hearing like that, it's pretty inspiring because that's like kind of the mindset that I try to, make sure that I can instill that and for the years to come with her growing up, because it's like, I do this for a living, and it's like I've never really had a job that I ever didn't like, because I'm like, I kind of refuse to like do anything to the norm. So I'm like, if she wants to do something, if she has like a certain path, I'm like, I'm going to be supportive of that and allow her to kind of live her journey, because it's like, that's what I do. So, you know, she's got to be able to do that.
Why
too.
not all, share it, right?
That's
that is so cool. You know, the first job I ever did with Zelda acting was actually in someone's film shot in Montana. So we flew out to Montana, and she was 8 months old, when I was her mother, and she's in a number of scenes, and it was such a wonderful thing to do with her way back then. I had no clue that I would be doing it years later.
Yeah.
So I'd love to talk a little bit about the film festivals too, because I think that, you guys had talked about how amazing that whole process was. Did you have a specific approach to going to festivals? Like, was there like, we want to do a certain amount, or we're just throwing it out there, or sort of what was the approach behind those?
Well, we have come to fall in love with, a lot of festivals, but there are a couple that really fill your rocket up with fuel. And one of them is Mitch Davis and Fantasia Film Festival. That changed our lives. His whole crew, their attitude, the other movies that you play with. We knew that we wanted to try to get into Fantasia as our opening festival, because we just love it so much. And for other movie makers out there, it's definitely a career changer, because they have press and they have lots of eyes and people really respect them. And so it's a great way to start. Now, that being said, you can start with a lot of different festivals, because there's other festivals that also have that kind of beautiful power, not ugly power. And so, yeah, we have a definite festival strategy. But beyond like something like Fantasia, like starting out with a festival that can really fill your rocket up and shoot you out the gate, we also think that a festival that has two people sitting in the audience is equally as wonderful, because those two people are there and we learn a ton from them and from the people that are putting on the festival. So they're all really important to us, and we love to try to go to them all. COVID hurt because we couldn't go international anymore. Like, we couldn't even go to Fantasia. A lot of things we lost a bunch of money because we had tickets to go places, and then everything shut back down, and it was like very hard. But when the world is a regular place, we try to go to every single festival, because we learn so much as filmmakers. I think that's our biggest thing, is like, we go home from our viewings and we've just learned a ton from the audience, and from the festival, like the people who put it on. So we've made a lot of great friends, learned a ton. And, on the business side, business does happen even at the smallest festivals. You don't know who's going to be sitting there to talk to you about what they want to do with you.
So true.
Yeah, it's always interesting, I think, that business side of things that, we're sort of learning and getting to figure out. And it is such a learning experience for filmmakers. What do you think, for maybe filmmakers out there that are trying to submit or have already submitted and they've got accepted, that sort of thing? What are some maybe proactive things they could do to be successful at a festival? Because you can probably just send your film to a festival and they say, hey, you're in. And it's like, cool, good to go. And then, maybe nothing happens. Is there a way for people to be proactive and get in people's minds while there?
Yes. We notice, do you have an answer?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, we notice that festivals are very appreciative of the fact that we don't just suddenly like when they accept us, like on Facebook or Instagram, or like, we're not like, our relationship doesn't start the moment they're like, yeah, you're in the festival. It's like, sometimes we'll follow festivals for 2 years that we have never applied, just to see, well, what are they doing? Like, you have to be involved. You can't just be a fair weather friend. And the thing is, it's fun to be involved because you can see what movies certain festivals have.
Yeah.
What's their feeling? What are they writing about? What's their energy like? And it's like, you can very quickly. So when you get into those festivals, we've noticed a lot of time, festival directors, like, I just want to thank you for, like, I know that you've been following us for a long time, and I want to thank you for being involved. Like, because that's important to us too. They're just people. Festivals are just like us. We're movie makers. They're festival makers. We're all trying to do the same thing. We have to hold hands. We have to support each other. And so I think there's a lot of ways to be really proactive.
And I would add just a couple of things. We've been to, I think I counted how many festivals we've been to, and I think it's like 90 or something that we've been over the course of all our features since 2011 or 12, when we got into our first festival. And so one thing that I think that helps too is, once you are in, to stay in touch with the people there and offer more than what they're asking for. Like when they're like, hey, I need like stills and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, what else can I do for you? Can I send you an intro? If I can't make it, can I send you an intro? And they'll always say, yes. Oh my God, we would love that. Of course, going to the festival is great. And most of the time it was never paid for. So you're spending a lot of money, but it does add an extra element where they'll be willing to do much more for your film, sort of, if they know you're involved and if you're going to go. Another thing too that I used to do a lot is I would look at the local papers around a festival. And so before the festival, I would write these papers or news outlets or, online outlets and say, hey, our film's going to be there. And often they would have an interview, and we made some excellent connections and got some great press just by having the gumption to write these people and say, hey, why don't you cover us,
No, I think that's very clever. It's very proactive. I think people forget about doing, like, kind of, it sounds weird, but like having that personal connection and going that extra mile of like just being kind of nice, right?
Yeah,
it's like, it's like common courtesy almost at the same time.
Yeah, it's pretty similar to that like whole like old business strategy of like, you got to send 100 emails, and then it's just like, if you don't send those emails, then it's like, then nothing will happen. So it's like, if you at least start reaching out, doing all these things, like some people will start having a connection with you, and then you'll be able to branch off of that.
Absolutely.
Totally.
And the other thing is you meet a lot of people that then they may run a festival. It's like, it's such a great community. And we're talking more, I think, more about the horror genre festival circuit now, because we noticed there was a difference between the when we were making dramas. It was a much harder slog to get press, to get into cool festivals, because they're looking for more industry type stuff. Like, you really are competing with multi-million-dollar movies when you're in the drama festival circuit.
Yeah.
And the great thing about the genre circuit is they're not obsessed with high production necessarily. They're obsessed with cool stories, cool art, just cool stuff. So it's like it's a great community. So I think we're talking a lot about, the genre circuit.
Hey, I have one more note real fast on the festival thing. So something that is one of my favorite parts about festivals is they hold incredible panels and seminars, and taking advantage of those. I go there like a nerdy kid, like with a notebook and a pen. I absolutely love listening to, when they have authors, I'll go and hear the authors read and talk about their work. Often I've learned, the kind of mics we use, these little Zoom mics, I learned from going to a women's festival in Vancouver, British Columbia. And I took this like cool little, 3-hour thing there on sound. I just was at a festival in Montana, and I took this class on makeup, and now I know how to do like great bruises or cuts or slices, stuff that we're going to use in this film. And they're free, and so I would take advantage of all those cool panels that festivals offer. And sometimes now they ask us to talk on them, which is really fun and a privilege too.
Yeah, it's like a bunch of little mini master classes
with people who are doing it, right? I know that's one thing that, I mean, we got a little taste of an anomaly, obviously, with you guys talking, and it's so educational for people. And probably just the more you listen to, the more you experience, the more you're going to learn as a whole. And I feel like, we kind of do that similarly with this podcast, where we talk to people and we get to hear their stories and how things work. And it's a learning experience. You kind of figure out like, oh, I never thought about this that way, or they have a different perspective. And it kind of just opens your mind up to new ways of doing things. And so, I mean, it's so great to hear though, that you know, it's working well. And it's just like, it's that simple personal connection that works.
Yeah, it really is. We've met so many nice people. It's fun to have these relationships, you know, and work with people then too. You end up doing little things with people and hopefully big things with people. Like, we want to work with you guys.
Yeah.
I know, we're same. Yeah, we're excited.
That's pretty similar to how like 90% of our entire crew, it's usually like either one of us will have worked with this one person one time. And then we're like, hey, guess what? You're now part of the family. So
Yeah.
we'll see you at the next shoot.
So I know you probably can't talk too much about this new film, but I you know, you've kind of teased it a little bit. Is there anything you can tell us about this new project? I mean, you know, tell the listeners about the new project, because I think it sounds very exciting. I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, okay, so it takes place in Depression era America, and it's about a family of performers on the carnival circuit, the dying sort of vaudeville circuit, and with a horror theme. It's like a carnival with sort of a horror theme, and their side act is murder. And it's kind of we want to explore body horror in this one. So it's a cross between Frankenstein and Bonnie and Clyde. And one of our main characters is a 1931 Chevy, and it is a beauty.
Oh, that is too awesome. That gets me excited.
Yeah, I think I saw
It's so fun. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, please. I didn't mean
behind the scenes of, did you have it on a trailer and you were like filming from the back of was it another truck? I'm trying to just picture what I saw.
Right. Good memory. Yeah. But actually the Chevy runs really well. It's my dad's, actually it was my grandfather's Chevy. Now it's my dad's Chevy. Then it's going to be our Chevy, and then Zelda's Chevy. And it runs really well. And we're running it through the winter. It loves to be run, and it loves to be filmed. And one of the things that we're all noticing about this particular movie is it wants to be made. Like, it's just laying out scenes in front of us: snowy days, foggy days, rainy roads, like outfits that we found traveling, like, you know, around on the festival circuit. We go to, the secondhand stores and look for $5 jackets. And it's just like, this movie has just been an absolute pleasure to make, because it just kind of is making itself. We're just trying to keep up with it. So it's really, really interesting. Looks great. Oh, and it's the first time we've ever been a real family in our movie.
Oh, yeah.
So that's really cool. It's about a mother, a father, and a daughter. So it's like the first time that we actually, usually I'm usually I'm the asshole. And
we loved your cameo in Hellbender too. We were like, this is great.
But in Hellbender, I get dispatched really quick, which was fun.
I was going to say, you were technically Lulu's uncle in
right.
Hellbender, right? Yeah.
Right. So it's always like, you know, it's always, but this is the first time we're a family, and that's really fun. And it's neat to see it on film. So
that's awesome. So, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, I'm just thinking back to all those little like setups and payoffs in Hellbender, and those little like subtle things where the dialogue reveals like a visual that you didn't have to reference. Like in the beginning,
well, we gotta be careful.
I'm not gonna spoil, but when you go to the store and then there's the older gentleman, and he's just like, and then later on, and then like that thing where you see your character. And then you say, like, right. My niece. And then later on, she's just like, oh, my uncle. And then you're like, oh, that's right. The connection. And it's like, you didn't have to say, like, this is my niece. This is her name. This is my uncle. This is his name. It's just little dialogue things that are just callbacks that just makes the story full circle, where it's like, as you're going along, you're, like, piecing things back together from, like, grabbing from the beginning. And I really, really like that part.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I'm so glad you mentioned those two things. You're the first person who's mentioned those two things that were important to us, like the man in the store. Mm-hmm. It's funny that no one's ever brought that up. I'm always surprised that no one really brings that up, and you just brought it up. And I'm really,
I feel like so cool. That I'm 3 for 3 with,
because the bees when we were at the festival.
Right. There's another, right. I love, like, it's so funny. It makes me so happy when people bring up those tiny little things, because it's like, oh, cool, that seed blossomed. So thank God, you know.
Also the detail of, like, I realized when they go through the door and they need the key, and then there's a bunch of keys on the other side because you get a new key every time. I was like, that's
Right.
cool. I like that. It's not just one key. It's like the detail of like, okay, where's this go after?
Yeah, and I think what's great too is those small things for me are what they take a movie to the next level. You know, they take a movie that is interesting or fun and they bring it to that other level of you could like I'm really excited to rewatch this. Like I was like, oh man, like I cannot wait because I want to go back and look at all those things again and see them again and say, oh, okay, this is something I didn't realize or maybe, you know, this ties together just like I thought it did or that. And I think, you know, for people that are going to be able to watch this on Shudder very soon, I think the fun part is that there's definitely rewatchability, like quite a bit of it.
And I have a terrible, horrible memory in general. So it just goes to show how well, and I'm not just saying this, but how well Hellbender was made that I'm able to remember these little details. Because like recently I just watched like Dune a few weeks ago. I watched like It Follows recently, and I'm like, I couldn't tell you more than like 6 details about like those movies combined. And I feel like Hellbender, I was able to pull out all this information. Also, it was also at the theater too. So that was
super fun.
I love the fact that we were.
And that
able
was
to
a
see
fun theater, great energy in that theater. That was a great day at Hellbender that day. That was a fun theater.
So
I'm so glad that you like those details. Toby is responsible. Toby loves putting tiny circles in our films. I think she's very responsible for, like, sometimes I'll be like, why are we shooting this? And she'll be like, it's because it's important because later there's going to be a reference to it. And I'm like, all right.
I'm always doing that with Cameron. I'm like, oh, like with Rick and me, I was like, before we even, when we were still in like pre-production, I was like, I want each character to have their own theme, like with the music. Like that never happens.
Oh,
I feel like we
right.
never think of that. It's like, I want each character to have their own theme. And I was thinking like, oh, if we ever shoot something, I want to be able to do something where like, there's just one scene where all the characters are wearing the same colors as like the Simpsons family for some reason.
Right,
just
yes.
like just their
Easter
outfits
egg
just like
beyond.
coordinate, where it's just like, why did they do that? Like, I don't know, but I was able to.
I love that.
I love it too. And I think those things are so important, even on a subliminal level. If you don't know why, I think you have to like infiltrate your film with those little things, because subliminally, you never know if people are going to, I personally think that they contribute to the whole of the scene.
Mm-hmm.
You know, something we were talking about on the way this morning, John and I, is something we like to do in our films is what I call from acting school private moments. I think it's important to have little private moments in a film where you kind of see your characters' interiority. You know, we've used mirrors a lot in our films, and almost all of them. And in this case, in the new film, we're trying to have these little individual creep factors where John's character always sees like birds, you know, and then Zelda's character always sees people knitting, and my character, I want to always be missing, you know, finding a missing shoe. You know, there's just weird little things that somehow piece together something much more deep and full than you think that they mean.
And I think it puts the audience on edge a little bit too, as to like, this is going to be something reoccurring most likely, but it's like, why is it reoccurring? Is it going to be something terrifying later, or is it going to just be that they're having a moment? And you know what I mean? It's sort of like you're saying, internal more. I think those types of things really just, they sew a project together. You know, they sew a good concept together. So in kind of closing things up here too, I want to give a plug to some of the Hellbender music. Where can people go find and listen?
Thank you so much. So we're on Spotify. The only thing about our music is
and Apple.
We're on iTunes and Spotify, and we are coming out with an actual vinyl album that a company called Ship to Shore is putting out. So that's exciting, and we're going to be on on the drive-in.
Joe Bob Briggs.
Joe Bob Briggs drive-in, and we're gonna perform something there. So that's gonna be pretty
way.
Cool. Yeah,
that's awesome.
But our band Hellbender, all the E's are 6s, so that's how you find us. If you type us into the internet will kind of come up.
I gotta say, I've listened to Blood on the Stone about 30,000 times. It's on my
I
workout.
love
It's on my
that one.
workout playlist too.
Oh, cool.
It's just so
Thank
intense.
you.
I love it. So, and obviously, just for people to be able to find you guys in general, where can we obviously find the film Hellbender? I mean, we've kind of talked about it on Shudder already, but where can people find you guys too? How can everyone just follow you if they want to?
Yeah, so our website is wonderwheelproductions.com, wonderwheelproductions.com. And you can check out all our films on there. Yeah, and all links are on there.
And we're on Instagram and Facebook. We love talking to people. So it's John Adams on Facebook. It's Toby Poser on Facebook. And on Instagram, we're adams.family.films.
And
That's
on
with
Twitter,
1D.
we're Adams_films.
And that's Adams with 1D, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, that was something we were talking about. It's John. How does it feel to have both the Adams family tie-in, but you also have John Adams tie-in?
I mean, my whole life,
Yeah, you're just
I
that
don't even
look.
know what to say.
Yeah.
But it's just since day one, it's always been like, da-na-na-na. Just come up with something more original. You know what I mean? And then people are like, you're the fifth president. It's actually, no, it's the second and the fifth.
I love it. Awesome.
It's pretty. My favorite was, are you named after the beer? And it's like, well, when you're not drunk anymore, you're going to realize that it's Sam Adams, not John Adams. So
I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for talking with us, and we really appreciate it and coming on the podcast. And I know our listeners are going to absolutely love this. So
Thank you both.
so much for having us. And on a personal level, we can't wait to actually work on set with you guys because we
100%.
love what you do. We love what you do.
thank you guys so much for listening, as always. Of course, we're going to leave all of the links that they talk about down in the description below. If you're on YouTube, anywhere else, go check them out. Be sure to follow all their stuff, and definitely catch Hellbender February 24th on Shudder if you're free.
If you want to go watch the trailer, it's a fantastic trailer. But if you want to go
really
into
is.
it just not knowing what to expect, going blind, I just go watch the movie. I highly recommend it.
Anyway, guys, thanks for listening and watching as always, and we'll catch you guys later.
Peace.
We Are Film. The We Are Film podcast is brought to you by the Black Mountain Visuals Podcast Network.